I love it.
All right. What's going on, everybody? Blaise over here at the Blue Chip Athletic Club podcast, and I'm super excited to chat with Azul today. Before we kind of get into everything, I want to remind you guys that we are working a ton of new programs for you. We've got a new coach hiring on, and we're actually just releasing our beta program, which is going to be $30 for 30 days of working with our new coach, Nick Parker. In the online space, we're super excited to premiere that. So if you're interested in that, shoot us a message and we'll get you guys that information. But I'm not going to go through all the partnerships right now because I want to get chatting with Azul and not keep her hanging. So what is up, dude? I want to hear a little bit from you right off the rip, who you are, where you're from, what you do, and give the people a little bit of context as to why you're on the show.
Cool. Hi, I'm Azul. I am a holistic health and fitness coach. I am currently actually in Argentina. I've been here for a couple weeks. It's where I'm originally from. Decided to come visit family. Love the city, Buenos Aires, but I live in LA, and I do everything virtually. So I'm a virtual coach. And and you and I met through L2. Precision, shout out to Precision Nutrition and L2. And I have followed you for a little bit now, and I love like everything that you talk about. And obviously through L2 felt like we were really aligned. And
Tell people a little bit like what does a health coach do? Like I know because we do a lot of it, but I know like some people are like, what, someone's a health coach and works online and does this stuff. So I want to kind of give some people some background as to like what that looks like for you on a day to day.
Yeah. Well, I started health coaching 5 to 7 years ago. I'm so bad with timelines, but I started health coaching a while ago, and I initially got introduced to health coaching in like a holistic integrative realm. So I did Institute of Integrative Nutrition. And so the way I kind of approach health coaching in a holistic realm is basically like taking, acknowledging that health isn't just how much you exercise and what you eat, but there's so much more that goes into living a healthy and happy life, right? Community, how fulfilled you are in your career, right? Things like that. And so with health coaching, what I specifically do is I work with primarily women, but also men. I say heal their relationship with food, fitness, and their bodies. And that comes from my previous experience and how I entered the fitness and nutrition realm, which was not in the healthiest way. I had a very morphed body image. I used fitness and food as more of a punishment for myself, as opposed to like what I feel like it is or what it should be, which is self-care, like a way to take care of yourself, a way to get stronger. And so that was my background with it. And coming out of that, I decided I wanted to help people approach this realm in a way that I thought was a little healthier and more sustainable and long-term, right? How can we do these things as a way to take care of ourselves, as a way to show our bodies love, and in a way that's like just way more sustainable than I feel like the fitness and nutrition industry has kind of gone on in the last, ever since it started, to be honest.
Yeah, dude. I resonate with a lot of stuff that you say, and like I can't relate more with like getting into health for the wrong reason, like I was a 15-year-old kid who wanted to get jacked to hook up with chicks, like I feel like all like 15-year-old boys are like that. Like why not, right? Like be good at sports and get girls is kind of like the driver, and then you kind of figure out like none of that gets you to where you want to be. Like you might put on a little bit of strength and whatnot, but like I like to say, like you can give somebody else Michael Jordan's training program, but they're not going to be Michael Jordan without the other facets of their health and life kind of figured out, right? And I think in your realm of health coaching, that's kind of what it's talking about, right? You're getting the mindset piece, you're approaching it from a place that's different, compassion, having that kind of whole health picture. So you're not just like, oh yeah, I'm just here because I want the scale to read a certain number. It's really, really hard to be successful and understand like what the scale truly means or what that's moving towards if that's your only measure too of success,
Totally. I mean, that's something I'm talking, especially with females, about all the time, right? Is like I lived my life on the scale, like every single morning, get on the scale. If it went a certain direction, it was like the best day. If it went the other direction, it was going to be a terrible day. Like it's literally just how I started every single day was, am I a failure or am I doing everything right? And to your point, like, yeah, as a dude growing up, you're like, okay, well, I have to be really jacked. I have to have like the biceps and the abs and all these things. And for a female, it's the opposite, where it's like, I just have to be as small as possible, and be as skinny as possible. And, that obviously does not contribute to good health, right? Like you're either not getting the nutrients you need, you're not eating enough, you're overtraining, you're, overworking out, and you're just placing the emphasis on all the wrong things. And not only that, it's like you're just never happy. Like myself and the people that I work with, it's like you get to a certain weight and then you're like, okay, well, just like another 5, like this is another 5 pounds. Like how often I feel like do we hear as fitness coaches, like, I just want to lose the last 5 and then I'll be happy. And then maybe you lose them and you're like, okay, but now I want like abs, or like, it's never good enough. And then what I find also is that when you enter into this realm with that kind of mentality of like, I'll be happy when, right? Or with the mentality of like, I just have to continue getting smaller and smaller, you're feeding into this fear that continuously grows, because now you're scared of going backwards, right? So it's like, there's no winning when you enter this realm with a certain mindset. So I'm not opposed to anyone wanting to lose weight or gain muscle or whatever your goals are. But what's really important in my practice is just intention. Like, what are you trying to do? Like, why are you trying to do this? What is the intention behind this? Because I feel like that, I don't want to say like makes or breaks, but that's like really the telling, like, will this stick? Will it won't? Is it going to feel good? Is it not going to feel good?
Yeah, I totally, man, you said a lot of good stuff in there. I think the one analogy that I make, and like you kind of talk about it too, it's like, are you falling in love with winning or losing the game or playing the game? Like, that's really what it's about. Because like at the end of the day, like the health thing, it's really hard to be like, oh, by the way, I'm going to sell you a health program. And by the way, you're going to have to work out for the rest of your life. You're going to have to eat well forever. And oh, by the way, like it never ends. And father time is going to get you no matter what. And like selling that to somebody is like, holy hell, like how are you supposed to do that? Because realistically, that's what you have to do. Or otherwise, you're just going to yo-yo back, right? Oh, you made it to, maybe your goal is I want to lose 20 pounds. You lose the 20 pounds, and it's like, then what? And then you're like, okay, if you take your foot off the gas, you're going right back to what I'll call your body's initial like equilibrium before you get a new equilibrium. Or you're there and then you want more or more or more or more. And then at a certain point, it becomes like, is this really healthy for me as a 6 foot tall dude to be 120 pounds? Like, probably not. It's probably not good for my health to be like that. So yeah. I think like if you're able to fall in love with the game and the process of like what makes you feel good. And that's why we talk too a lot about like training does not have to look the same for everybody. Like training for like you might be going on a walk in Buenos Aires and like enjoying like the scenery and like sightseeing somewhere that you've never been. And training for me may be going for laps and swimming in a pool or something. And it can totally be different. And if you like doing that, then you should do more of that. And if I like swimming and I don't like walking, like I probably should not walk, because that's not going to work for me in the long haul. So it's so interesting, like the parallels in what we even see. I'll say that there's a lot of life coaching that ends up happening. And there's probably, I would actually say in the online coaching space for me so far, I have done probably 90% life mindset, health coaching, and 10% like training coaching. It's probably the split. Yeah.
Oh, I totally agree with you. I think it's such a vulnerable space too. Like when people approach you as like a fitness coach or a health coach or a nutrition coach, it's coming from like a very vulnerable place, and they have a certain mindset already coming into it, right? They don't feel good. They feel uncomfortable. They want change. It's a confusing space. And I think, like you also highlighted a couple things that I always talk to clients about too, where it's like, it is so much about the journey as opposed to just the destination. Like, it's nice to have those like kind of big lofty goals where you're like, this is what I'm working towards, all this stuff. But to your point, you have to enjoy it. Like, we're not paying attention enough to what we're doing in the moment. And that's why it becomes unsustainable or so hard to hold on to. And that's kind of the frustration with the industry that we're in, as much as like, I'm in it because I love it. And I'm also in it because of how frustrated I am in it. Right. Because I mean,
Yes.
I like the 6-week programs, the 12-week programs where they just like, you do it and then you're like, I'm done, like I either lost the weight or I gained the muscle and that's it. And then you roll back, right? Because you don't know what to do next, or you haven't been sold this lifestyle as a lifestyle for the rest of your life. Cause that's obviously daunting and probably doesn't sell as well as just like being like,
No, it
6
doesn't.
weeks to a
Confirm, it does
6-pack
not.
ab,
Yeah.
like it doesn't sell as well. And so it's just, it's frustrating because by the time people come to me, right, they think it's like, by the time people come to work with me, they think it's like a problem of theirs. Like, they're lazy. They're just not someone that's ever going to work out consistently. Like, they've made it like a moral and a personal problem when it's like, it's not. It's just, we haven't been educated, or the industry as a whole. Like, if you go on Instagram or if you go on TikTok or if you go anywhere, we're not talking about that, right? Like, we're not talking about these things in a sustainable way. And therefore people just like think it's their problem. And you're like, it's not really a you problem. It's the fact that we've like packaged this in a certain way that makes you think that it's going to be easy, or it should be easy, or, whatever that is. And so then that's why, like, I talk about compassion all the time. It's just because like we berate ourselves so much into just like either giving up fully or, ending up worse than when you started. Sorry, I kind of went all over the place with that, but I hope that makes
No.
sense.
I love it. There's so much that you said there. That also, like, it comes down to like doing that internal work a ton too, right? Like, geez Louise, like, imagine, I wish I could rewind, having my, we'll call wisdom, which is really not, it's really just failing a bazillion times and then like kind of figuring out along the way, which I feel like most people end up doing. But if I could go back and be like, and build from a place of like internal gratification in that sense, and then get to where like now, like, oh my gosh, you'd be like leaps and bounds further. Like, I can't, once it stops becoming about an aesthetic or whatever, it starts to become about the health, like all of those things shift. And then, geez Louise, like you look the best you've ever looked, and you move the best and you feel the best. And you said like, coming and attacking the problem and not feeling like you're alone, I feel like is so big. Like, it, why does Ozempic sell? This is a great example. Like Ozempic, the new GLP-1s are like this new fad of like, oh, we're going to slash all your weight. And it's the get skinny quick, like regimen, because people want the microwave results in a crock pot world, like, geez Louise, like, this is a slow cooker, bro. Like, if you want it to really last for forever, you got to do it that way, because there's side effects. Like, we live in America, or I guess you partially live in America, in and out all the time. But in America, like, you can make those decisions. You can take Ozempic, you can smoke cigarettes, you can do all these things, but like, there's always a cost associated with taking those things or doing that. And when you have that cost and you're fully educated on what's happening, like, you realize, like, unless you do the internal work, the external result isn't going to happen for the long haul too. So
Yeah.
it's so crazy. Like, you there's so many parallels in the health space to pharmaceuticals and other realms also, where it's just like, I don't even know where to begin to help people realize that and sell this is a lifestyle and a life thing that you really need to buy into for you to get to where you want to be. And like you said, it's not sexy. It's not like, oh yeah, take this one pill and you're going to lose 40 pounds in 2 months, like, shit, that sounds good. I'd love to do that. Like, that would be super easy
Yeah.
and great. But Ozempic also, you lose like 40% of your fat,
It's a
or
lot.
weight loss is lean muscle mass. And then like
Mm-hmm.
you're in a position where now you're breaking bones earlier, and we don't know the long-term effects, and these other like
Yeah.
things start to happen. So I don't know. I totally agree. I think, if you get to work with somebody like Azul, and you get to like understand like your unique situation and your past traumas or whatever, in this like vulnerable state of coaching, to where you can really start to unpack that, I think that you'll get way further, although the work is harder up front.
Yeah, no, totally. The work is harder up front. And I think, you touched on, right, that the short term versus the long term gain, which is why things like Ozempic is so, I think Ozempic, I've kind of gone up and down with how I feel about Ozempic. I think that it definitely has a space, and it's helped a lot of people that were really struggling. And then you will always have the people that abuse it, that maybe shouldn't be doing it. And I think the fitness and the nutrition world is always going to have that. That's literally every fad diet that's come into existence, like came into existence to really help someone, right? Like keto, for example, with
Totally. Yeah.
like, was it narcolepsy? Now, of course, I'm forgetting narcolepsy. But, and then you have the people that are like, oh, you can lose weight, and then completely abuse it. And you're like, this wasn't meant for you, right? But we live in a society, especially if you're in the US or LA, where it's all about aesthetics. And it's like, that's the only thing that matters, is what you look like. That's like the biggest problem, right? That's where all this stems from, is that like so much of our self-worth comes from what we look like. And that's like a whole nother, that's a whole nother realm in conversation. But
the other thing too is look at the amount of people that you see, like, oh man, since I became a coach, and now my feeds are like all like coaching things and gym things, like, bro,
yeah,
there's like people that look like they are like made from somebody drew them, like
yeah,
this dude or girl is like so jacked, they're like doing all this stuff, and then like come to find out, like I've talked with enough people now, I have an eye at this point for it, but like they're taking something that is helping them look that way,
yeah,
or they're have an incredible genetic gift, or there's all this other things that happen. And by the way, they're like the half of a half of a half of a half of a 100 millionth of a percent
yeah,
that are
yeah,
now the model for this business. That I get
yeah.
it, dude. Like if the business, let's say Gymshark, and I don't want to pick on Gymshark, so hopefully they don't come after me. Gymshark hires Sebum, who's like one of the most jacked dudes on the face of planet Earth and has been for forever, to wear their stuff. And people are like, oh, Sebum's wearing that. Like if I buy Gymshark, I can be big as Sebum. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
you can't, bro. You're not Arnold. You're not Sebum. You're not those people. But that like gives people this false perception of like, I will be fit when I look like Sebum, and or I will be
Mm-hmm.
healthy when that's the case. And it's not, dude. Like what I like to think of, like, what do you want to do? What is 50 years from now, 20 years from now, 10 years from now? You can even work backwards. Like when I'm 80, my grandfather, I will say, is my biggest inspiration. He's 85. He plays basketball with 20-year-old dudes and runs the court
Amazing.
on them. Dude, it's unreal. And I'm like, you know what? If I can do that, I've made it, dude. Like I have made it. Like, I don't care what I look like. If I can run up and down the court at 80, he re-roofed his house in the Sacramento, or in the like Northern California area, at 82, all by himself, like
That's
carrying up
wild.
shingles up onto the roof, like unreal. So I'm like, this guy functionally moves. He's not in a nursing home. He's hanging out with grandchildren, great grandchildren, like moving with them, able to be around. That to me is what health is all about. And I could care less what I look like. And that has been like incredibly freeing and refreshing. So I think like everybody needs to figure out what my grandfather's name is Merle, who their Merle is,
Merle.
what,
Yeah,
yeah.
I love that. What a name, Merle.
He hits a baseline jump shot, and they've deemed it the Pearl
I
because
love.
it's Merle shooting the Pearl. They've been playing pickup basketball in the same gym with the same like group of guys for like 50 years. It's unreal.
That's crazy. See, that's
Yeah.
like, and I find a lot more with like older clients, not even older, like going into 40, like the 40s, that stuff starts to become more important. I find it's more the younger generation, and it's a little harder to get people to think long term, because we're so right? Until you hit 30s, you don't really start to feel anything in your body. So you're like, I can do whatever I want. And then, you hit 30 and you're like, oh, what's this? Like,
Dude,
you
to
start
be
to
honest,
actually think about it.
I'm not even 30 yet, dude. I'm 29 right now, and it is coming, and I feel it already. So it's coming.
Welcome. No, but I think, like when you're younger, you kind of do, it's all very short term gratification versus long term gratification, and health is long term, no matter really how you look at it, right? And so I think a lot of what I try and do is how to get people to think long term, but also short term. And that doesn't make sense when I say it that way. But what, like, let's say you have, like, what is your why? What is your ultimate why of, like, yours is your grandfather, you wanting to play basketball when you're 80, or just not wanting to, like, be hunched over. But also, I think on a granular level, on like day to day, what I don't think we talk about enough about, or you get what I mean, is that the benefits of doing these things on a day to day mentally. So who do you want to be? Like, who do you want to show up of as, how do you want to be proud of yourself, right? Like, these are certain things that I talk about this all the time on my channel. Is like, I don't want to work out every day. I've never been one of those people that's like, I'm going to do my workout. Like, I played sports growing up. So like, I do have a little bit of that background, but playing sports is very different than like showing up at the gym or making yourself go for a walk, right? It's a very different discipline or mindset. And I think one of the things is, one, having that why of when I don't want to do it, thinking, okay, well, why am I going out in there and doing it to begin with, right? Because it's not what I want to do right now is sit on the couch. I just want to chill and do nothing, right? Because it's hard. But then I try and think about, like, okay, well, how do I want to feel? Who is the person that I want to be? How do I feel after I do my workout? Why am I doing my workout? There's so much mental work that comes with eating a balanced diet. It's way easier to eat a cookie than like make yourself eat a salad, for example, right? Like, there's so much mental work that goes behind it that I don't think we talk about enough. And I think that's like one of the biggest missing pieces, is that people just expect it to be easy because they see people online that like just go to the gym every single day, or just have a smoothie for breakfast every single day. And because we make it look easy and we don't talk about like the mental side of it, then when it's not easy, people just don't think it's for them, or they think that there's something inherently wrong with themselves, or like it's just not the right diet, or it's just not the right workout plan. And it's like, no, it's just like there's mental work that goes into it. So to your point, yeah, I think 10% of what I do is fitness, and then 90% of what I do is like, how do we change this inside? How you're talking to yourself, how you're showing up, how you see yourself, what your goals are, all of it.
Yeah, you hit on a great point that I don't think that I would have even thought about too, is like, until things can become a habit, it's really, really tough right away, right? Like, forming that first like formation stage is so tough. For the training example, I think is a great one. I now wake up and train in the morning pretty much every day.
Mm-hmm.
I have not been this way for my entire life. It's not like I woke up and I sprung out of bed every single day and I'm like, oh, here I go, going out to do my like workout. Like, that's not the case. Like, it has taken a long time and a lot of actually self-analysis of like, hey, when Blaise wakes up in the morning, I have more of my energy. Okay, if after a day of work, I feel like a bag of shit and I am not going to be good in a training session if I do that. Oh, if I try to work out in the morning, oh, by the way, if I work out in the morning, I feel better during the day. I have more energy at work and I'm more present. Oh, and now I can't like talk myself out of it at the end of the day. And I can't like, I'm like giving myself like guardrails and protections. And what it took is it took a lot of like questioning, like, who am I? What has like led me to this space? And it's the same with like nutrition is the same way. Like, I can't like, if I gave somebody like the diet that I'm eating like currently and was like, here you go, and they've never like had an understanding of kind of the nutrition or why or a piece, or maybe they eat McDonald's 7 days a week and I'm like, here's my diet, bro, good luck. They'd be like, are you out of your goddamn mind? Like,
Yeah.
it's not, nobody's ready for that. You have to meet people where they are. And you
Mm-hmm.
talked about it too, is like, you can't, you can't do anything but that. Meet people where they are, ask the why question, and then really drill down into what that is and start to kind of be like, oh, why do I not want to go train today? Is it because I'm actually tired? Is it because the workout's going to be hard and I don't want to do it? Is it because I need to give myself some rest, which arguably I would say I probably need to do a little bit more of personally? That's self critique there of taking rest days. But like, that's what you need to ask. Like, but the reason that I don't like to take a ton of rest days personally is because I feel better when I move. So
Mm-hmm.
a rest day for me is I take a walk in the morning and I do some mobility in the day. And like, that's a rest day. Count it. Like, I'm still moving around. I still feel like I checked the box, and I'm doing it not because of the way that my body's going to look from doing that. I'm doing it because of the way that my mind feels after doing that. So
Yeah.
yeah, I totally resonate with a ton of stuff that you're saying too.
Yeah. Well, what I'm hearing a lot of is like positive association, right? It's like a lot of all these, like when you look at good habits and bad habits, I don't really like to label things as good as bad, but like I'm just going to do it for right now, right? Doing something like working out, for example, right, is a good habit to get into, but it's hard in the beginning, especially if you don't have a positive association with working out, right? You're getting sweaty, you get sore, you don't know what the hell you're doing. Maybe growing up, like you weren't the fastest runner and you got made fun of in school. Like there's a lot of history there for a lot of people. It's confronting. Some people do everything that they can to not acknowledge their body. And when you start working out, sometimes you have to be confronted with the reality of like, oh, I'm slower than I thought, or oh, I'm weaker than I thought, or oh, my my knee hurts and that's like a pain that I don't like to feel. If I do a crunch, like I'm feeling my belly and I don't like to feel my belly. Working out is incredibly confronting. And so for a lot of people, we don't have a positive association with working out. Whereas like you had mentioned, like you have a positive association with it now, right? Like I feel better when I do it. I'm a better person. I feel stronger. I feel, all of these things. And that's when it gets easier to do, when you can think of it and be like, okay, well, this is why I do it. Of course, it's a good thing to do. A lot of people aren't starting off there, right? And so
I didn't.
it's
Yeah.
right. Like
Yeah.
it sucks. And like, even if, let's say you injure yourself and you come back and all of a sudden you can't lift as heavy as you used to, that's incredibly confronting. You're like, shit, and then if you're not careful, right? Like a lot of us spiral into these like the negative self-talk that's like, well, you don't deserve to be here, or you're weak as shit, or look at you, like you're pathetic. Like, and then again, the negative association comes into it, right? And so that's like the mindset work I think that a good trainer, a good coach can help you with, is how do you get yourself out of that mindset of like just expectations, or again, like how you approach working out, right? Like how can I'm always telling my clients, like, even the one, sometimes they'll come to me and be like, I really didn't want to work out, but afterwards, like they feel really good. And I'm like, remember that. Like really try and like sit with, after your workout, sit with like how you're feeling, how proud you are, what emotions are coming up for you, because that is what you want to start having your brain associate working out with, as opposed to when you're on the couch and you're like, oh, now I'm going to be sweaty and I'm going to be sore and oh, this sucks and whatever. Yeah, of course it's going to be harder to do, like 1,000%. And it's the same thing goes with nutrition. Right. It's, people like don't know how to cook and then they feel like a failure because they made something gross, or, just that positive versus negative association, I think is huge. And also again, comes with why you're doing this to begin with. Like if you're coming into it because you're like, I'm a piece of shit and I need to change myself, you're always going to have a negative association, because now whenever you're working out, you're remembering that you're doing it because you don't like yourself and because you hate the way you look, as opposed to if we can shift the conversation to be like, I'm doing these things for myself because I want to take care of myself, because I respect my body, because whatever, you start to develop more of a positive association with the things that you're putting in your body, the way you're working out, all of that.
Yeah. That I couldn't agree more. The positive association is so big. I've even boiled it down with myself and then with clients too of like, let's say I hate running and I decided that I hate running because I've never been a runner. And it's something that I don't like, and we'll call it distance running because I don't love distance running personally. So let's say like running 10 miles is something that really is like, I don't want to do because I don't feel like I'm fast at a 10-mile run or blah, blah, blah. So if I, go on a 10-mile run, we've broken it down to like, when I come back from the 10-mile run, like do something that I really, really like to do after that. For example, let's say, hey, you go on your 10-mile run and you've got like a post workout snack that you really like. Maybe you don't have it all the time. It's like a ice cream bar or it's chocolate and it may not even be the healthiest thing in the planet, right? Like maybe you don't want to come back and slam a protein shake that tastes like awful chocolate or whatever. And oh, by the way, if anybody wants protein recommendations, we've got a ton over here too. We actually just got this new one. I swear, from First Form, we started working with them and they came out with this juice protein. Oh my God, dude, it's so good.
Juice protein?
Dude, it tastes so good. It was strawberry limeade. Sorry, we're going off tangent, but so I'll send it to you later.
Okay.
So, where was I? Oh yeah. So you come back from your run at 10 miles and then you pick up your ice cream sandwich and you're like, I'm now associating me doing something that was hard and that I didn't necessarily want to do with now getting a reward of some kind. And it doesn't necessarily have to be an ice cream sandwich. It could be a hot shower right away where you spend an extra 10 minutes in the shower because you like that. Or maybe you condition your hair on those days, or you give yourself a pedicure on the days that you do that. Like whatever your thing becomes, you can associate like that. And that gives you power in that time. And then you're like, oh, I'm going to go on my 10-mile run because I want a pedicure today, or whatever your thing becomes. Because then it just changes the narrative, right? So I've done that with a couple people, myself included, where like I've got a protein powder I like, or a ritual or something that I want to do. And you can really, really start to move those habits and move the needle and move the internal dialogue if you start to have some sort of a reward after doing something that you may not want to do a ton of, like in the moment.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, I mean, we're going into conversation about like intrinsic motivation, extrinsic motivation, and like how like that kind of like intrinsic being like the reward being, kind of what I talked about before, like how proud of you are you, like how proud of yourself are you right now? How do you feel? And then the extrinsic being like something a little bit more tangible, which to get me do like a 10K run, I would also need something extrinsic. I don't think I would do that necessarily on my own. But
not right away, but after a couple ice cream sandwiches, you're ready to rock, bro. I'm telling you. You're good.
I mean, I also don't necessarily, I'm weary with, so another thing I talk to my clients about a lot is like identification, right? Like I am not a runner. Like I'm very weary to say things like that because like I could be, who knows, I just don't like it right now. Right. Those are kind of voices in our head that I feel like hold people back a lot of the time too, right? Where they're like, I'm just not someone that like likes to work out all the time. It's like that alone, identifying as that is like a whole, like 6-session coaching session. But, just being careful with like kind of the labels you put on yourself, right? Because if you can run 5 miles, you are technically a runner, right? Like, but you might not enjoy it.
If you can run 20 yards, you're a runner, dude. Exactly. It depends on your definition, right? And totally. Dude, that's so interesting. I would be curious. Okay, so I want to backtrack. We kind of, I should have done this sooner. So let's say I'm somebody who listens to this and I'm like, dude, I want to work with Azul. She's got a lot of the things that she says I'm struggling with. One, like, how do you take somebody in that's interested in your coaching, and like, how would you work through like, I guess like identifying ways, like low hanging fruit things that they could do? How do you work your coaching mold? I want to like give people kind of a backroom dealing, and feel free to use me as a test dummy if you need to ask any questions to let it rip. I want to give people a little bit of like an insight into how it would be like to work with you, because I think it'd be super cool to do that as well for the next couple minutes.
Yeah. So it's as I'm sure you know, everyone is so different. So as much as I would love to like mold it into like, we do this and then we do this and then we do this, everyone is so different. So I generally I always do like a free like 45-minute consultation. I'll have them fill out a couple different forms. Some of them in regards to like nutrition. It really depends what they're coming to me for, because some people have the fitness stuff done and they're like, I just need help with what I'm eating. Some people want the whole thing. That's where I feel like people get the most results, is when they do all of it, of course. But a lot of it sometimes feels a little bit like therapy, where you're just talking through. It's a lot of asking why, ultimately, right? Like, and then from there, kind of figuring out what we had talked about, like, what are the limiting beliefs? What are the things that like you're scared of? What's holding you back, right? Because kind of what we had talked about before, right? Like that self-identification, that might be something for someone, right? For some people, it is like, I just like grew up with certain people saying certain things to me, right? And so then we get into the mindset work of that. But I would say a lot of it is mindset. And then I also do programming, like I program people's workouts, or I don't do specific meal plans. I do more of like teaching people how to eat, as opposed to like have 100 grams of this or 100, whatever that might look like, because everyone is so different.
And that's awful. Long term, that's awful.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
you can say it, dude. You can say it. You say counting macros and carrying around the food scale isn't the best thing ever for your whole life. Like, yeah, I can attest. Like that would be awful.
I think where I've kind of landed is, I think there are certain things that are good for initial education, right? What might like an actual serving of cereal look like, right? Or like, what does an actual serving of nuts look like? Like, I think some sort of awareness is helpful, but depending on who my client is and what their background is, I'm very careful with who I might start like introducing that kind of stuff to. A lot of the times it's just awareness of how their body feels. Like we have taken out everyone's trust in themselves, and we've kind of placed trust in everyone else except for us, right? And so like you might go to dinner and be like, that person's eating that, that's how much I need to eat, or that's what they eat on Instagram and that's how I need to eat, and all these things. And we're just not in touch with our own bodily awareness, bodily cues, all of it. And so tangent, Jesus. Where was I going with that? We went from mindset to nutrition to fitness, and you asked me a very simple question of what my
no. I asked like how it would be to work with you, and you said it's just going to vary so much. And I think
which is a very frustrating
really
answer. I feel like no one likes the answer.
I think it's important to understand though, and here's the deal: like Azul, us over here at Blue Chip, like I want everybody to realize, like a health coach is no different than a plumber, than an electrician, than whoever is out there doing like whatever those jobs are. And it's because like we have seen, people that need to start with a food scale to understand where they need. And by the way, nobody eats 2 teaspoons or tablespoons of peanut butter ever, bro. Could you imagine? Not a single time. You're like, oh, I'm going to have 2 tablespoons of peanut butter. Insert old jar. Like that, it just happens that way, right? So like if you're able to build a little bit of awareness in that regard, and you're somebody who's ready for that, you're willing to do that, and you're basically like come to the conclusion that that's something to do, then that's a great path for you. If you're somebody who's like on the other end of the spectrum and you're like, I have such an awful relationship with food. I used to measure food all the time and it was so stringent and blah, blah, blah. And I had no ability to morph my day around it. It like ruined me, it made me sad and depressed. And it's like, I would venture to guess that Azul would not program a food scale in your program. Like I would venture to guess like your education does not need to be a food scale. It's probably like, hey, internal gratification. It would be talking through like, what are your hunger and thirst cues? It would be talking about like, why is your relationship with food the way it is? Like, let's talk about some other things. And you even hit on something else too that I wanted to ask you about. Is like, when you're coaching people like this as a health coach and fitness coach, I feel like it sometimes, how is it on you? Because like, bro, it like I'm not going to lie. There are times where I get off the phone with a client and I'm like, oh God, like, I feel like emotionally like drained. And I'm like, bro, I want to help you so bad, but I can't do the work for you. Now I want to help you so bad. Um, but then I'm like, God, but like, if you just like let it happen, like, I don't know, it can be very, very, what's the word I want? It's a lonely road, I think, for health coaches in that way. And I think that you end up being a lot for a lot of people. And I'm curious how you kind of deal with that. And I know I went off on a tangent too, before I asked that question, but hit
No,
me with the
that's
answer. I want to hear
totally
it.
fine. There were two parts to that. The first part being, I think a lot of what I do is teach people how to speak to themselves. First, I think that is like the biggest change in a lot of my clients is like changing how they speak to themselves, essentially how they coach themselves, right? To then be able to, that's the self-compassionate part, is like how you bounce back from working out for 3 days and then not working out, or, you know, feeling like you were eating so well and then not eating so well, right? Like that was like the biggest change in my personal story, was changing how I spoke to myself. And that's when everything changed for me. So I think that's, to answer your original question, probably the number one thing that I help people do is change how they speak to themselves and then how they approach exercise and nutrition, all that kind of stuff. And then the second part of that was, I remember when I first entered, I think that's what makes a good coach, is like a lot of us have been through what our clients have been through. And so like we can empathize or really feel for where they're at. And you want nothing more than to have someone not feel that way anymore. You're like, oh my God, like I have chills like thinking about it, because like when a client comes to me, especially if she's a female, right? And she's telling me her story and I'm like, I know how it feels to feel that way. And I so don't want you to. And you have to like, I can imagine it's how like parents feel with their kids, where you're like, I don't want you to go through the heartbreak. I don't want you to go through this. I don't want you to go, but they have to. And you have to be patient with it. And I've had to learn how to set boundaries, because when I first entered this space, you want, to your point, you want to be everything for everyone. You want to be available 24/7 to chat. You want to like go into a session and just change their entire world in one session. You're like, I want you to leave here not even having to come back to me. And if they don't, you get really upset. Again, I think just because we know how shitty it feels to be on that other side, but also like, yeah, it's a lot. I burnt myself out so fast when I first entered the space, because like I was doing extra research on my time off and I was sending them articles and I was like thinking about like, okay, this is their problem. How do I make it go for them faster? And like, I just had to realize that sometimes as a coach, your job is just to like create space for them to feel comfortable to go through the process, and that you're not going to change their life. Like that was such a hard thing for me to think about. Like I can't just change their life in one session. Like I can plant a seed, I can start moving the needle forward, but you can't do it all in 6 or 12 weeks. Like it's like a scam that I've even sold myself, you know? It's like,
Yeah. The one thing that I'll say is like the most freeing and also the saddest point of being a coach is like when you realize that you're a side character in everybody's movie, or maybe even like an extra.
yeah.
Like
Mm-hmm.
you're so like irrelevant in somebody else's life and such an afterburner thought that like, bro, you're a side character. Maybe you're like
Yeah.
maybe a side character. You might have like 2 lines in their movie, bro. Like that might
Yeah.
be it. Or you're literally just a walking extra and you're just one of the zombies in whatever movie, you know? Like you're not that important, and it's so freeing. It's one thing that I feel like I've realized recently, as it's incredibly freeing. It's also a little sad because everybody's kind of like, you know, selfishly they want to be that hero that helps them like figure out this thing or
Yeah.
whatever. Like I think like a lot of coaches probably have a bit of a hero complex, myself included, which is probably why I fly search and rescue aircraft in the Coast Guard as a day job. You know, maybe that's part of my problem, you know. But yeah, I totally resonate with that, and I feel like it's really easy to do from a coach's perspective to want that and want it almost too much. And I feel like in the L2 course, which again, shout out to Dom from L2. That dude was the man. I don't know how
He
many
was.
sessions you had with him, but he was the greatest. And he said these like coaching tips that I'll never forget. He's like, first thing he said, he was like, care less. He's like, you cannot care more than the other person cares about their health journey. And I was like, that makes a lot of sense. Roger that. Care less.
Yeah.
Then he was like, oh, and by the way, not only do you need to care less, you need to play dumb. And like, I was like, oh man, like playing dumb. What do you mean? Aren't you supposed to know everything as a coach? And he's like, no. Like ask them and make them tell you like what they think. And it's like, oh, well, okay. Play dumb, care less. And I'm definitely missing the last one. What was the last one that he said? Play dumb, care less. And, oh man. Oh, be lazy. The last one's be lazy. He's like, be lazy. He's like, you can't want it for them. Like you have to be lazy, and that like, you're not going to like go crazy and send people 50,000 articles that they're never going to read because it's not something that they even want. Like you got to meet them where they're at, do all those things. And I was like, man, shout out to Dom, dude. Shout out to Dom and L2.
Shout out to Dom. We love you, Dom. I agree though. You can't want it more than they do, even though, yeah, I mean, I think about my clients all the time. And to your point, like I am such a small little blip, right? And I felt that way even more so when I was just doing training, because for a little bit, I worked at Equinox and I was a trainer there, and that's all I did. And it's such a small piece of the puzzle, working out. Whereas like health coaching, I feel like I get to touch a lot on like really important things that can really move the needle forward. And I didn't feel like I could do that with just fitness, which is why I like ended up kind of going a little bit more heavy into health coaching as opposed to fitness. But it's true. You can't want it more. And I've definitely scared people off I've scared clients off before in the past by like doing too much too quick, sending them things and be like, I don't have time to think about all this. And I'm like, oh yeah, I remember when I worked a 9 to 5 and, I don't have children, but like you have all these other things. It's like, yeah, when am I going to read this like freaking PDF on protein that you sent me? Right. It's like,
totally.
And sleeping well and doing this. It's like, you have to meet people where they're at. And I think the more people you work with, I know we kind of learned about this in PN too, but we all have the biases that we have, right? As, me as a white female living in LA, right? Like the things that I do, the foods that I eat, the workouts that I do, it's very culturally biased. And I realized like once I went online and was able to work with people from literally anywhere, that mentality of having to sit back and be like, yeah, I don't know, actually. Like, why don't you educate me a little bit on what is the cultural norm of what you eat, right? Because like not everyone likes avocados, right? Or not everyone, when we talk about eating fruits and veggies that are all different colors, right? That is such a kind of US thing to begin with, right? Like a lot of time, like if I had a client that was like from India and their food all looks like the same color because of the spices that they put in it, it doesn't make it unhealthy, right? So like, what is that? There's that like personal bias. Or I am very lucky to be able to live in neighborhoods where I feel comfortable walking outside. And so I can preach all the time, like, get out and walk and whatever, but that might not be someone else's reality. And so I think as a coach, like it is humbling, but also helps relieve the pressure a little bit to be like, oh no, like I have to take a step back and let my clients show me like what their lives are like and what's normal for them, and then kind of fit within their parameter. And you just end up learning so much more. And I think, yeah, the more you don't know, I feel like the smarter of a coach you kind of become, to be honest. Because to Dom's point, you just keep your minds open to everything. And that's like the biggest change, I think, is making people realize like, oh, we don't all fit in a box, and healthy looks different for everyone. And yeah.
And the other saying that they said was like, they're the expert of their life, right? Like they're the expert of their own life. And you talked about it before with nutrition and how people eat and being in tune with that. Like maybe one person really loves to eat breakfast because it makes them feel great one day, and the other person, it makes them feel like a bag of shit. And those guys or gals are going to have a very different like nutrition protocol because of that. And that's just the way it is, like, I totally agree. The clients kind of drive the conversation, and we're kind of just here to be a side character and a guide along the way. And it's super, super cool. So I don't want to keep you too much longer. I do want to ask you though, most of the time when we have somebody on, I like to ask like, hey, you are given the mic for one piece of health advice.
Oh God.
Somebody comes, I know it's a really big opportunity you have. Somebody's like, hey, Azul, they walk up to you in the street and they're like, I want one piece of health advice from you. Like, what would you want to give to somebody who is either just starting their journey or like early on, I'd say, in a health journey? Like, what would you say to them that you think or wish that you would have known when you started to help them kind of set themselves up for success?
I think the first thing that comes to mind is to be kind to yourself. I mean, it sounds so cheesy, but again, just from personal experience, it's treat yourself like you would someone that you love. And that means like when you hit setback or when you hit failure or whatever, how you approach that is going to define how you move forward, right? So if like, let's say you're starting a fitness journey and you're like really into it for a week, and then like that second week you like hit a wall, right? If you start to go into thoughts of like, I knew I was lazy, I knew this, I knew I couldn't do it, whatever, you're not going to move forward. But if you can approach it with a little bit more curiosity and kind of that self-compassion piece of like, okay, this is fine. I'm not a piece of shit. I'm just trying something new. I'm just learning. How can I move forward? I really think the way that we speak to ourselves is everything. And so I would just challenge you to maybe think about like, if someone that you really loved was trying to do what you're doing and they came to you, what would you say to them, right? Like that in of itself will change so much. So if someone like was trying to start their fitness journey, someone that you really love, and they came to you and they're like, I was doing it so well for a week and then I fell off and whatever, I'm such a piece of shit, I'm such a whatever, like how would you approach that person and how would you help them? Just shifting that mentality of how you would treat yourself like someone that you love. Again, so cheesy, but like what I wish I would have known in the beginning of my health and wellness journey, because I probably would have started and stopped less, or I just would have approached fitness and nutrition from such a healthier standpoint. That's like probably in a nutshell what I would say is just treat yourself, treat your body like you would someone that you really, really love. Just focus on that voice inside of your head, because that will, not even with just fitness and nutrition, right? Like entrepreneurship, career, relationship, it's everything.
Yeah, dude, I really appreciate you coming on. Just so you know too, we'll drop all of Azul's stuff for like social media handles or whatever kind of she wants to blast out to you guys in the show notes. Just don't be a weirdo and and be kind when you reach
Please,
out.
no weirdos.
And, don't be a weirdo. Don't be a weirdo. But yeah, I'll send you the episode too. And I really appreciate it. It's been an awesome chat. And I just want to thank you again for coming on the show. And that's kind of all we got. Do you have anything else? Any final words?
It is. I just love talking to other coaches, because, when you work for yourself, you don't see people that often, other than my clients. So I just love having these conversations with other coaches. And so it's been really nice to connect with you. I appreciate you creating the space to be able to do this and chat organically.
Yeah, totally. You'll be welcome back anytime. I think it was an awesome chat. So like I said, this little stuff will be in the show notes. Thank you guys for tuning in. Don't forget 30 for 30 with Nick Parker's kicking off in November. We're super excited to premiere that beta program with him. And we'll upload this in the next couple of days and send it over to you. So thanks again.
Beautiful.
All right. See you guys.
All right. Ciao.